The cave floor gave way before Rian Solis even understood what was happening. One moment, he was struggling to keep up with his party, swinging his chipped dagger, panting, trying not to embarrass himself again. The next, the entire chamber quaked with a violent pulse that didn't belong to any monster. Dust rained from above. Cracks spiderwebbed beneath their feet like something alive was clawing from below. Dungeon drop? Someone screamed. A phenomenon that shouldn't exist in low-tier dungeons. Yet, it was happening anyway. The floor collapsed. Everyone bolted for the exit. Scrambling across crumbling stone and falling debris, Rian reached out, shouting for help, but the tank at the front didn't even look back. Another raider kicked off his shoulder just to gain momentum, eyes filled with panic and selfish desperation. Wait, don't leave me! But they already had. The last thing Rian saw was their silhouettes vanishing into daylight, while the ground beneath him shattered completely. He plunged into darkness, air whipping past him, his heartbeat screaming louder than the collapse. The world became endless black, as he fell deeper, deeper, deeper into a part of the dungeon no map had ever marked, and then silence. Rian's body slammed into cold stone. He gasped, choking on dust, pain tearing through every bone, but somehow alive. Barely. He forced his eyes open. He wasn't in a dungeon floor. He was somewhere ancient. A cavern so wide it felt like a hollowed-out world. And at the center of it, standing like a forgotten god, was a monolith. Taller than any tower, carved with runes that pulsed in sickening, rhythmic waves. Its energy wasn't mana. It was something far older, far hungrier. Rian felt his breath hitch. His skin crawled. Something deep inside him, some survival instinct begged him to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was trapped in its invisible gravity, dragged closer step by trembling step. The monolith reacted. Not to his mana, not to his strength, but to him. A blinding crack split the ancient stone. Energy erupted outward in tendrils of crimson lightning, latching onto his body, burrowing into muscle and bone. Rian screamed, collapsing to his knees as his veins glowed violently beneath his skin. The monolith shattered in an explosion of light, its fragments swirling around him like sentient embers. And then they sank into him. Every shard, every rune, every ounce of catastrophic power. His vision went white. For a moment, Rian felt his heart stop and then restart with a force that nearly knocked him unconscious. Something monstrous awoke inside his chest. Something that wasn't human. Something that felt like the echo of worlds ending. A voice cold, mechanical, absolute, whispered in his mind. Trait acquired. Calamity vessel lifeform of destruction. Rian gasped, clutching his chest as the last echo of the monolith faded. What? The cavern rumbled in answer. Not because it was collapsing, but because the dungeon itself was reacting to him now. Walls pulsed as if alive. Monsters hiding in the dark fled deeper into shadows, and the air thickened with fear. Not his fear. Theirs. Rian Solis, the weakest F-rank raider, the nobody everyone mocked, rose slowly to his feet, his eyes glowing faintly with the remnants of forbidden power. Whatever he had become, the dungeon understood it first. A calamity had awakened. Rian didn't know how long he lay there. Minutes, hours, maybe longer before the trembling in his arms finally stopped. When he pushed himself upright, the cavern around him felt different. The air seemed lighter. Or perhaps it was him that had changed. His breathing steadied unnaturally fast. Wounds he remembered splitting open down his ribs were gone, skin smooth, blood vanished as if wiped clean by invisible hands. He swallowed hard. No, that's not possible. But the evidence was written across his own body. A faint shimmer wrapped around him, bending the light in strange ways. When he lifted a hand, the air rippled like heat distortion, except it was cold, emotionless. A pressure he didn't understand pulsed outward from his palm, rolling across the cavern like a shockwave. Something screeched. A skeletal beast, lurking behind a pillar, something with too many limbs and no eyes, was crushed into paste, without Rian even touching it. Bones pulverized, flesh ruptured. It died instantly. Rian flinched backward, horrified. I didn't even do anything. But the pressure wasn't stopping. It intensified, spreading out from him like a gravitational force. Monsters hidden in the dark let out agonized cries as their bodies crumpled, spines snapping under weight they couldn't see. Rian's heart pounded in terror. What am I? What did that monolith turn me into? A faint glow wrapped around his arm, mana residue from the dead monsters, and in the next instant, it sank into his skin, absorbed, consumed, and not gently, either. It felt like pulling in air after drowning, effortless, automatic, like his body needed it. Poison fumes drifted from a ruptured sac on the ground. They curled around him as if curious, then were swallowed into his lungs with no effect. Instead of burning or choking him, the venom dissolved smoothly, turning into a warm pulse of energy in his chest. He stumbled, gripping his neck. This isn't real. This isn't real. But reality kept defying him. The cavern floor emitted a spatial ripple, a distortion that should have shredded his body into pieces. Instead, the distortion wrapped around him like silk, folding harmlessly into his bloodstream. His nerves tingled with strange awareness, as if every inch of the dungeon's structure was whispering to him. The abyss didn't just see him, it recognized him, and it hated him. The walls pulsated, runes lighting up like enormous awakening eyes. A warning roar thundered through the abyss, echoing in every direction. The dungeon's core had detected something unnatural, something it needed to eliminate. Holes opened across the ceiling, black mist poured out, and from that mist, elite monsters descended. Creatures that should only spawn on the deepest, most catastrophic floors emerged like they had been waiting. Their bloodshot eyes locked onto Rian instantly. Their bodies trembled not with hunger, but fear. The presence radiating from him made even apex predators hesitate. Rian's breath caught in his throat. I'm the threat here. Not a victim. Not a raider. A calamity birthed inside the dungeon. As he took one step backward, the entire abyss shuddered. Runes flared violently across the cavern walls. A deafening alarm, ancient and mechanical, ripped through the stone. Dungeon Catastrophe Protocol activated R. The dungeon wasn't hunting him. It was trying to contain him. Rian turned and ran, because if he didn't escape now, this place would collapse the entire underground just to erase him from existence. And, for the first time, the dungeon feared him more than he feared it. Rian didn't make it far before the abyss answered his escape attempt with unrestrained fury. The tunnels ahead convulsed, stone grinding against stone, ceiling splitting, dust exploding outward as dozens of elite beasts dropped from above. Their eyes glowed with one unified instinct: eliminate the anomaly. The air grew thick with killing intent, so suffocating it felt like breathing through iron. Rian froze for a heartbeat. They're hunting me. These monsters aren't acting on instinct, they're being guided. A horned brute charged first, a towering beast plated in obsidian armor. Rian raised his arms instinctively as the monster slammed into him. The impact should have shattered every bone in his body. It didn't. Instead, a blast of invisible force tore from Rian's core, blasting the beast backward. Its armored chest collapsed inward like crushed metal, sending it skidding across the floor with a dying screech. Rian staggered back, pale. I didn't do that on purpose. But the dungeon didn't care. More monsters surged in fangs, claws, mana-infused bodies lunging as one. Rian ducked as a winged predator swooped at him, its talons sparking with blue flame. Panic shot through him, and his vision blurred. Suddenly, he wasn't there. He reappeared several meters away, breathless, stumbling. Void step? Teleportation? His heartbeat thundered. What is happening to me? Before he could catch his breath, another beast lunged, a serpentine creature that spat corrosive venom. The acid hit Rian full on, melting through the floor, the walls, even the air crackled. Rian felt nothing. In fact, the poison sank into his skin like mist, converting into raw energy that pulsed through his bloodstream. The serpent recoiled in terror, and that fear triggered something in Rian, pressure radiating from him like a living storm. The cavern floor cracked. Flames without color erupted around him, shredding monsters with aura alone. Bodies ignited, twisted, collapsed into dust. Rian clutched his head, horrified. Stop, please. But the power didn't stop. Not until every beast within 20 meters lay silent, crushed, burned, or erased entirely. Entire chambers collapsed with the force of his uncontrolled outburst, turning pathways into smoldering craters. And deep within the dungeon, miles above, something stirred. A floating sphere of glass and crystal threads blinked awake. An observer core, a dungeon's artificial brain. Runes lit across its surface as it analyzed the seismic and mana anomalies. Then it spoke in a cold mechanical voice. Entity detected. Classification Catastrophe Unit. Issuing global dungeon alert. Use it. Negan to do part. Across the surface world, alarms blared through raid outposts. Mana readings spiked, guilds scrambled, commanders shouted orders, believing a hidden boss had awakened. None of them knew the truth. The boss was an abandoned F-rank raider trying desperately not to lose himself. Rian forced himself to keep moving, panting, shaking, wiping blood and dust from his face. But each step grew heavier, not from exhaustion but from dread. Every new ability felt less human. Every instinct felt more monstrous. I'm not a calamity, he whispered to himself, voice trembling. I'm still me. I'm still... The ground shook violently again. More beasts approached. Rian Solace kept climbing, terrified not of death, but of what he was becoming with every kill. The closer Rian climbed toward the surface, the more violently the dungeon reacted like a beast, thrashing as poison spread through its veins. The tunnels quaked so fiercely he had to brace himself against the walls just to stay upright. Dust poured from the ceiling. Mana veins burst like ruptured arteries, spilling raw energy that crackled in volatile arcs. Above him, the world was already panicking. Explosions shook the earth as emergency alarms blared across the dungeon entrance. Raiders outside stumbled back in terror as the ground convulsed beneath their boots. An S-class boss is rising. Get the evacuation teams. Call every guild leader now. The tremors only intensified, each one stronger than the last. So, powerful trees uprooted, stone structures cracked, and the sky dimmed with swirling mana clouds. No one imagined the truth. It wasn't a boss. It was a single human trying desperately to climb out alive. Rian dragged himself through the last collapsing tunnel, his breaths ragged, his limbs trembling from the constant pressure radiating off his own body. Every heartbeat sent another shockwave through the stone. By the time he reached the final threshold, the surface's thin curtain of light, his knees buckled. He fell onto the open ground, and the world recoiled. The moment his body hit the surface, the earth sizzled beneath him. Grass shriveled, soil melted into glass. A crater formed around his limp body as invisible force poured out of him like an uncontrolled storm. Raiders gathered several meters away, eyes wide, weapons raised. What the hell is that? It's taking human form. No, look at the aura. That's not human. Boss-level camouflage. Kill it before it transforms. Rian tried to lift his head. Wait, I'm not. They didn't hear him, or maybe they refused to. A high-rank lightning mage stepped forward, sparks dancing wildly along his arm. All units, prepare to eliminate the entity. Panic clawed up Rian's throat. He forced himself onto shaking hands, trying to suppress the catastrophic pressure bleeding from his core. The ground crackled as his aura fought against his will, wanting to lash out, wanting to destroy. Stop! Stop! He clenched his fists, biting down on a scream as the energy inside him resisted. Writhing like a living thing, for a moment, one agonizing moment, he managed to force it inward. The tremors ceased. The air steadied, but the raiders didn't lower their weapons. He's restraining his presence? No boss can do that. What is he? It's intelligent. Even worse. Rian stumbled to his feet, vision swimming. I'm a raider! I'm human! I fell during a blast of mana shot past him, slicing a tree in half. They weren't listening. Fear twisted their faces into masks of hostility. To them, the trembling boy standing in the crater wasn't someone to rescue. He was a threat to exterminate. Heart hammering, Rian turned and ran, sprinting into the forest, each step leaving scorch marks behind. Branches disintegrated when he brushed past them. Animals fled. Birds dropped dead mid-flight when they passed too close to his aura. Behind him, shouts echoed. Catastrophe! A catastrophe in human form! Send word to the capital. Lock down every dungeon now. By nightfall, the news had already spread. A new anomaly had surfaced. A human-shaped catastrophe. And Rian Solace, the weakest raider of his guild, had become the world's greatest fear. The forest trembled long before she arrived. Elira Dawn stopped at the edge of a scorched clearing, her breath catching as the mana in the air twisted violently around her senses. It felt like walking into the aftermath of a calamity, air warped, trees melted, earth torn open in jagged scars. Her guild had sent her to find the human-shaped catastrophe. But nothing prepared her for what she actually saw. In the center of the clearing, hunched over, gripping his head as if trying to hold himself together, was a boy. A human boy. Pale, shaking, eyes wide with terror. Each exhale from him rippled with destructive mana that shattered stones at his feet. Elira whispered, How can a human produce readings like this? Her sensor ability flickered, overwhelmed by the distortion around him. It was like standing next to a collapsing star pretending to breathe oxygen. Rian lifted his head at the sound of her steps. The moment their eyes met, Elira felt her heart jolt, not in fear, but in recognition. There was pain there, desperation, humanity, not the hollow hunger of a dungeon boss. "Please," he gasped, voice raw. "Stay back. I can't control it." The air behind him shimmered with unstable pressure, forming microfractures in space itself. Elira swallowed hard. Even standing several meters away, her bones vibrated, but instead of backing away, she stepped closer. "You're hurt. You should run," he choked. Everyone else did. His aura flared suddenly too fast to brace for. A shockwave blasted outward, ripping trees from roots and sending debris flying like knives. Elira raised a barrier in panic, feeling it crack under the sheer force. But the boy didn't attack. He fell to his knees again, slamming his hands against the ground. "Stop! Stop! I'm not trying to hurt anyone!" Elira stared at him, breath unsteady. This wasn't a monster. This was a human drowning in power he never asked for. "Tell me your name," she said softly. "Rian," he whispered. "Rian Solace. And I don't know what's happening to me." Elira's eyes widened. Solace, one of the weakest rating families, the F-rank failure everyone mocked. She knelt beside him despite the danger, placing a gentle hand over his trembling one. "Rian, listen to me. You're not alone now. I'll help you stabilize your aura." He looked up in disbelief, voice cracking. "You're not afraid of me?" "I can sense fear," she answered quietly. "And I can sense intent. You're terrified of hurting others. Monsters don't feel that." For a moment, his aura steadied. The forest stopped shaking. But the peace didn't last. A flare of red light shot into the sky, her guild's signal. Elira's face paled. "No, they're already here." Multiple signatures closed in from every direction. Hunters, elite ones. The kind ordered to kill on sight. A voice boomed through the trees. "Elira Dawn!" "Step away from the anomaly." Rian flinched. "They're going to kill me." "No." Elira stood, eyes burning with resolve. "They'll have to go through me first." Rian stared at her, stunned. Elira Dawn was risking everything, her rank, her life, her guild, for a stranger she'd met moments ago. But she had seen something they hadn't. The boy in front of her wasn't a catastrophe. He was someone begging not to become one. The forest had never known silence like this. Even the wind held its breath. Rian and Elira hid beneath the twisted roots of a fallen colossus tree, its bark scorched black from the last explosion. Smoke curled upward in trembling spirals. The air tasted of burnt mana, sharp, metallic, suffocating. And far off in the distance, shouts, footsteps, the coordinated march of hunters closing in. The guilds weren't searching anymore. They were hunting. Elira pressed a finger to her lips, signaling Rian to stay quiet. But how could he? His entire body throbbed with unstable power, every heartbeat threatening to send a shockwave through the earth. "They're everywhere," Rian whispered, voice shaking. "Why won't they stop? I didn't do anything wrong." Elira's gaze softened with painful sympathy. "Rian, when a dungeon sends out a catastrophe alert, the guilds act on instinct. They think you're the cause. They think you're a living disaster." He flinched at the word. "Calamity. Catastrophe. Hazard. Then I'll run," he muttered. "I'll keep running until..." A distant explosion cut him off, followed by the roar of a beast that wasn't natural. The hunters had summoned raid-type familiars, using them as bloodhounds. Mana surged across the land like a tidal wave. They were coming straight toward him. Rian's panic spiked, and his power reacted instantly. The ground beneath him cracked, sending tendrils of crimson energy lashing outward. Instinct took over. His body pulled mana from the air, from the earth, from the very life around him. Elira watched in horror as tree bark peeled away, grass wilted, and stones shattered under invisible pressure. Rian, stop! You're resonating. Your body is absorbing every hostile signature." He gasped as something else hit him, a rush of foreign mana. A hunter's fire spell had been cast somewhere nearby, and his body copied it, twisting it into something far more violent. Flames erupted from his palm. Not red, not orange, but pitch black. "No!" Rian screamed. The blast swallowed the forest in a massive shockwave. Trees vaporized, soil turned to glass. A radius of destruction several hundred meters wide formed in the blink of an eye. Silence. Elira shielded them at the last second. her barrier cracking like thin ice. Her breath came out ragged as she turned to him. Rian, you just erased an entire sector. His eyes widened in horror. I didn't mean to. I can't. It just happens when I'm scared. And that's when she understood. His evolution wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It was survival. Whenever Rian felt threatened, his body grew stronger to match the danger. Infinitely stronger. Elira grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me. If this continues, your instincts will overtake your mind. You'll lose your humanity. Rian, you could become exactly what they fear. He shook his head violently, tears burning at the corners of his eyes. No, I won't. I'm still me. But the hunters didn't care. A dozen guild elites emerged onto the cliffside above them, armor glowing with anti-catastrophe sigils. Their leader raised a weapon designed only for one purpose, eradicating threats too dangerous to live. There he is, target locked. Prepare the sealing barrage. Do not let the anomaly escape. Elira stood between them and Rian, arms spread wide. If you attack, you'll kill him. That is the mission, the commander replied coldly. Rian felt his heartbeat stutter. This was no longer a hunt. This was an execution, and the fear rising in his chest felt dangerously close to another evolution. The sky split open like a wound, not with lightning, not with mana, but with something far older, an ancient consciousness pressing through the atmosphere as if reality itself were too thin to contain it. Elira stumbled back, eyes wide in terror. Rian, look up. He did, and the world changed. Hovering above the dungeon mouth was a colossal, translucent form, shaped like a humanoid silhouette, made of shifting stone, roots, and swirling void light. Its presence bent gravity. Trees bowed, stones floated. The air hummed with an eerie resonance. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a raid boss. It was the dungeon itself given form. The dungeon will. A voice layered, ancient, echoing from every direction vibrated through Rian's bones. Fragment, return to the core. The ground split as countless calamity beasts surged upward, birthed from raw mana like nightmares taking shape. Their bodies dripped with black crystal, their roars synchronized as if controlled by one mind. The will had come to reclaim property that wasn't meant to walk free. Its gaze locked onto Rian. Cold, calculating, absolute. Designation, Catastrophe Engine. Origin, core fragment bonded to human vessel. Threat level, continental. Rian felt his blood freeze. Core fragment? I'm part of you? His entire existence, the pain, the mutations, the uncontrollable power suddenly had an answer. The monolith that shattered had been a dormant piece of the dungeon's origin. When it fused with him, it created an anomaly that shouldn't exist. Elira grabbed his arm. Rian, we have to run, now. But running was no longer an option. The beasts charged. Dozens, hundreds. Their shadows tore through the forest like a flood of living darkness. Rian stepped forward before Elira could pull him back. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from the pressure swelling inside him. I won't go back, he whispered. I won't be your engine. I won't be anything you try to control. The first beast lunged. Rian moved. The world detonated. A shockwave of catastrophic energy erupted from him, ripping the ground apart. Beasts evaporated on contact, their bodies dissolving into mist. Behind him, trees flattened in concentric circles. Above him, clouds split open, but more beasts regenerated instantly, surging from the spreading cracks. The dungeon will extended a hand made of swirling stone. A dimensional tear formed an expanding rift meant to drag him back into the abyss where he had originated. The pull hit Rian like a tidal wave, dragging his body toward the chasm. No. Elira threw herself between him and the tear, summoning a barrier so bright it burned her palms raw. Elira, move! Rian shouted. Not without you, she screamed back, voice cracking as the barrier shattered like glass, shards of mana slicing across her skin. Rian's fury ignited. His aura exploded outward in a violent surge, dark flame, and void pulses intertwined. Beasts disintegrated. The dimensional tear groaned under the pressure, its edges warping. But even as he fought, the truth stabbed into him. If the dungeon will wanted him erased, then his existence really was destabilizing every dungeon linked to this core. He wasn't just a threat to people, he was a threat to the world's entire ecosystem. Gritting his teeth, Rian pushed back against the dimensional pull with everything he had, power roaring around him like a collapsing star. "I won't be your weapon," he growled. "I won't be your monster. I'll decide my own fate, even if I have to destroy you to do it." For the first time, the dungeon will hesitated. A fragment had rebelled, and the world trembled at the implications. The forest could no longer hold him. Every heartbeat sent a violent pulse through the air, ripples of distortion that split tree trunks, shattered boulders, and carved trenches into the ground. Rian clutched his chest, gasping as the world around him twisted with each throb of catastrophic power. His body wasn't just unstable anymore. It was evolving. Elira watched helplessly, her hair whipping around from the force radiating off him. "Rian, your aura, it's overflowing. You need to breathe. Focus." "I am focusing," Rian shouted, voice breaking as another pulse exploded outward, flattening the surrounding terrain. "I'm trying. I don't want to hurt you." But fate didn't care about what he wanted. A colossal calamity beast burst through the ground, a skeletal titan fused with crystallized void energy. It lunged, jaws wide, intending to swallow him whole. Rian didn't dodge. He didn't have time. The creature touched him and vaporized. No blood, no corpse. Just pure energy sucked into Rian's body like water into a dying desert. Rian convulsed. His skin darkened with shifting patterns. Veins glowed violently. Horn-like shadows flickered around his head. His fingers elongated into claws of raw, mana-infused bone. For a few horrifying seconds, he didn't look human at all. He looked like the monster the world feared he was becoming. Elira stumbled back, eyes widening. Rian? He whipped around, fangs bared, pupils slit like a predator's. Instinct roared inside him. Hunt, destroy, consume. But then her voice cracked through the storm of instincts. "Rian, it's me!" The monstrous aura flickered. Rian's breath shook. He dropped to his knees, hands digging into the earth as he fought the beast inside. His form flickered between human and calamity, warping with every breath. "Elira, run!" he begged, voice strangled. Before IT takes over." "No." She knelt beside him, pulling his trembling head against her shoulder despite the heat burning off his skin. "I'm not leaving you. Not now. Not ever." He trembled harder, not from power, but from fear. Fear of himself. Fear of what he would become. But the world gave no time for fear. A sudden cascade of mana signals lit up the forest so enormous and synchronized that even Rian felt his heart stop. Lights descended from the sky, forming circles around them as high-ranking raiders teleported in. Armored figures emerged from the glow S-rank hunters, guildmasters, national-class elites. Their weapons crackled with runes designed to kill bosses, dragons, and catastrophes. Elira's face drained of color. "The guild leaders, they brought the entire S-rank division just for you." Rian stood, barely steady, eyes hollow. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to be something they fear." But the hunters didn't hesitate. Target confirmed. Anomaly must be neutralized. Prepare suppression protocol. And then the dungeon will materialized overhead again, its titanic voice rolling across mountains and plains. Erase the fragment. Restore equilibrium. Every dungeon on the continent trembled in agreement. The world wasn't just hunting Rian anymore. It was preparing for war. Elira grabbed his hand. "Rian, whatever happens next, don't lose yourself." He stared at the armies, at the dungeon will, at the sky that seemed ready to break apart. His body shook. His aura expanded. His evolution continued. And the world braced for the catastrophe he was destined to become. The mountains shook long before the first blow was even exchanged. Rian stood alone at the center of a shattered valley, his breath slow, trembling, visible as waves of distortion in the air. Every exhale warped the light around him. Every heartbeat cracked the earth beneath his feet. He wasn't attacking, he hadn't raised a hand. Yet, the land around him was already dying. Across from him, hundreds of S-rank raiders assembled in sweeping formations, their armor blazing with anti-catastrophe runes. The sky flickered with spell circles, layered one over another, hundreds of them each carrying enough destructive force to obliterate a city. Someone shouted the order, and the world erupted. A barrage of ultimate abilities rained down, meteors formed of compressed mana, spears of thunder, blades woven from spatial cuts, eruptions of volcanic flame. The collective power of the continent's strongest raiders crashed toward Rian like a collapsing sun. Rian flinched, not from pain, but from panic. "No, stop! Don't make me!" The attacks hit. The valley exploded in white light. Mountains fractured. Entire ridges vaporized. A deafening shockwave flattened forests miles away. Dust and debris blotted out the sky. When the light finally cleared, Rian still stood there, untouched. But everything around him, every rock, every tree, every stretch of land was gone, melted into a glassy wasteland. Under the weight of the catastrophic pressure radiating off his body, his voice trembled. I didn't fight back. I didn't hurt anyone, right? But the moment he stepped forward, the ground shattered under him. His aura alone was killing the battlefield. More raiders charged. Contain the anomaly. Do not let it stabilize. He's evolving again. Focus fire. They unleashed another wave of attacks, but Rian only raised his arms to shield his face, stumbling as each spell struck him. He didn't counterattack. He didn't strike. He didn't even look at them with hostility. But every blow he absorbed made his core react, absorbing, adapting, mutating. His aura expanded. His muscles tightened, veins glowing like molten metal. Plates of translucent mana shell flickered across his limbs like embryonic armor. His shadow twisted, splitting into multiple forms that writhed beneath his feet. Rian gritted his teeth, choking out, "Please, stop! I don't want this! I don't!" A thunder spear struck him, and the next phase triggered. Power roared out in a spiraling shockwave. Dozens of raiders were thrown back, crashing into cliffs hard enough to break stone. Spell circles shattered mid-air. The ground caved inward beneath Rian, as if bowing to something too massive to contain. "Stop!" Alera's voice tore through the chaos. She sprinted across the collapsing terrain, throwing herself between Rian and the attacking forces with a shield of pure mana that cracked instantly under the pressure. "Enough!" she screamed, eyes burning. "He's not a monster! He's terrified. He's fighting not to kill you." The raiders hesitated, not in belief, but in fear. Rian stared at her, numb, shaking. "Elira, I can't hold it. I'm losing myself." "I know." She grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You're still Rian. Remember that. Hold on to that." His breath hitched. For a moment, just a fleeting heartbeat, his aura flickered back toward human. But the world wasn't done hunting him. A distant commander screamed, "He's evolving again! Prepare the final sealing strike!" The sky darkened. Spell circles bigger than mountains formed overhead. Rian felt something inside his chest crack. Not bone, not muscle, humanity. His next evolution ignited, whether he wanted it or not, rising like a second heartbeat. A catastrophic will that didn't belong to him. And the war against the living disaster truly began. The world broke open inside Rian before it broke outside. His knees buckled, hands digging into the fractured earth as a violent surge erupted from deep within his core. The dungeon fragments, embedded in his body, silent until now, awakened all at once. His veins glowed like molten cracks in a dying star, light pouring through skin that strained to contain the impossible power building underneath. Elera felt the pressure first. A suffocating gravitational pull that bent the air around him. "Rian, Rian, look at me!" she shouted, struggling to stay upright as the ground caved under his feet. "You have to stay conscious." But Rian couldn't hear her over the roaring inside his head like the universe was collapsing in his skull. Voices. Memories not his own. The whisper of dungeon cores bleeding into his mind. Ascension sequence. Commencing ground. Merging fragments. 17%, 42%. His breath shortened. Gravity twisted violently around him, warping rocks into spheres, crushing trees into dust. Mana reversed in the air spells cast toward him unraveled mid-flight, siphoned into a swirling vortex around his body. Every particle of existence bent toward him like planets collapsing into a newborn black star. The raiders screamed. Some fled, some prayed. Because this wasn't evolution anymore. This was Ascension, and the dungeon will knew it. It materialized in the sky above, towering, monstrous, its form flickering between stone, void, and ancient code. Its voice boomed across valleys and mountains alike. Return to the core. The host mind is irrelevant. The engine belongs to me. Rian felt something cold dig into his consciousness, an invasive force slithering through his thoughts, draining his identity piece by piece. His memories flickered his childhood, his failures, the laughter of raiders mocking him. Faces blurred, names vanished. The dungeon will was overwriting him, replacing him, unmaking him. Ilera didn't hesitate. She slammed her hand against his chest and unleashed her rarest ability, a psychic convergence spell, one forbidden by most guilds because of the emotional danger involved. Threads of her consciousness latched onto Rian's, dragging him away from the abyss, swallowing his mind. For a moment, their minds collided, fear, despair, hope, pain, everything Rian felt flooding into her. Ilera cried out but didn't let go. "Rian, listen to me!" She sobbed into the link. "You're still here! I can feel you, don't let it take you!" Rian clenched his teeth, sweat dripping down his face as the invasive presence fought to erase him completely. I'm trying," he whispered, voice breaking. "I don't want to disappear. I don't want to become a monster." "You're not a monster," she breathed. "You're Rian Solis. Hold on to that." Something inside him cracked, but not in surrender, in defiance. The dungeon fragments surged again, but this time, they didn't consume him. He consumed them. The lights in his veins stabilized, turning from chaotic red to glowing white. His aura shifted, still catastrophic, still terrifying, but now controlled by will instead of instinct. Rian slowly lifted his head. His eyes glowed with the power of a dungeon core, yet sharp, focused, undeniably human. "I choose what I become," he said softly. The dungeon will flinched. Its massive form flickered, destabilizing as if Rian's very existence forced it into solidity, dragging the metaphysical entity into the physical realm. Valleys split. Mountains shook. The sky warped around the collision of two impossible forces. Rian rose from the crater, surrounded by gravity wells, collapsing mana loops, and void resonance spirals dancing around him, like a crown woven from the end of reality itself. A conscious calamity. A self-aware disaster. A lord of destruction with a human heart. Ilera stared in awe and fear and hope, because Rian had not become a monster. He had become something much worse and infinitely more powerful. The world's first Catastrophe Lord. The sky twisted like a living wound as Rian rose into the air, calamity energy pulsing from his body in waves that bent the horizon. Clouds tore apart, revealing a swirling vortex of mana reacting violently to his presence. Opposite him, the dungeon will manifested fully, an immense abomination of shifting stone, void tendrils, and ancient runes burning like suns. Its voice didn't echo through the air, it vibrated through existence itself. Calamity Engine. Return. Rian's fingers curled, black lightning sparking between them. "I'm not your engine," he growled. "And I'm done being your mistake." The will struck first. A beam of compressed spatial collapse shot downward, slicing the earth like a blade. Entire mountains in the distance sheared in half, their peaks drifting upward into the sky like lost ships. Rian twisted aside, his form blurring as void resonance wrapped around him. Even the shockwave behind him flipped forests upside down, tearing them into floating debris. He countered with a catastrophic pulse, an explosion of inverted mana that melted the beam mid-air. The collision formed a crater in the sky itself, a hollow pocket where sound ceased and light bent inward. Below, the world shattered. Rifts opened across the ground like cracking glass, glowing with otherworldly mana. Boulders rose weightlessly before being crushed into dust by the pressure radiating from Rian's heartbeat. The battlefield became a floating graveyard of earth and stone. Rian's voice trembled with fury. "You ruined my life! You turned me into this thing! You chased me, hunted me. You were created to sustain the cycle. All dungeons exist because of you." The revelation nearly froze him midair. Dungeons existed because of him? Because someone like him had always been at the center, absorbed, recycled, imprisoned by the will? He felt the fragments in his chest pulse painfully, memories of his mutation crawling under his skin. So that was the truth. He wasn't just an accident. He was a design. The will continued, its body rearranging into a monstrous face of stone and void. If you live, the dungeons die. If you ascend, the world will break. Ryan's breath hitched. So either I obey you, or everything collapses? There is no freedom for a disaster. Rian's eyes burned with rage, then resolve. "No," he whispered. "Not this time." He surged forward, calamity resonance erupting around him like a supernova. His body split into afterimages, each one tearing through layers of the dungeon will's form. Tendrils lashed at him, void blades scraped against his skin, but every wound healed instantly, his regeneration evolving to match the threat. Piece by piece, he dismantled the will, shattering its limbs, ripping apart its runic pillars, destabilizing its anchor points. Each fragment he absorbed screamed, vibrating with hatred and ancient memory. The will roared. The sky darkened. Reality buckled. If you kill me, the dungeons will fail. The balance will. Rian cut through the core chamber, calamity spirals twisting behind him like black comets. Then let them fail, he breathed. I'm done being your puppet. He pulled every fragment inside him into alignment, forcing them to resonate. The catastrophic pulse built at his center, compressing gravity, mana, and void into one lethal point. The will shrieked. Too late. Rian unleashed everything in one final burst. The world went white. The earth split. The sky folded. The will's core imploded on itself, collapsing into absolute nothing before scattering as dust across the collapsing rifts. Silence followed, broken only by Rian's trembling breath as he hovered above the ruined landscape, his body smoking, eyes dimming, but victorious. He had destroyed the dungeon will. Not as a calamity, but as himself. The world quieted for the first time since Rian's awakening, yet the silence felt fragile, as if reality itself was holding its breath around him. The dungeon rifts across the continent flickered weakly, stabilizing after the dungeon will's annihilation. Hunters and civilians alike watched with awe and terror as the sky settled back into its natural shape. But beneath that calm, one truth remained unshakable. Rian Solis was no ordinary man. He was a walking calamity, choosing not to destroy. When he stepped onto solid ground again, the earth groaned under each footfall. His presence warped the air, bending light at the edges like heat haze. Guild leaders gathered in a tense semicircle. S-rank raiders, master mages, frontline captains, their expressions flickered between fear, respect, and the instinctive urge to run. Even the strongest among them struggled to breathe in the oppressive aura rolling off Rian's body. One of the leaders finally spoke, voice trembling despite his attempt at authority. Rian Solis, are you still in control? Rian forced his aura deeper into himself. The pressure around them eased just enough for the wind to move again. He lowered his gaze, knowing what they saw in his eyes, those swirling abyssal rings that pulsed with unstable mana. I don't want to harm anyone, he said quietly, but I can't promise I won't react. My body is still adapting. A ripple of unease spread across the crowd. They had fought him just hours ago, unleashing everything they had, yet he had held back, chosen restraint over slaughter. That alone was enough to shift the narrative. An elderly guildmaster stepped forward. Then we have no choice but to accept reality. You're stronger than any force we can deploy. Stronger than any dungeon we've ever recorded. He swallowed, eyes narrowing with reluctant respect. You're not an enemy. You're a necessary protector. The word protector felt foreign in Rian's ears. For months, he'd been hunted, labeled a threat, cornered like a rabid beast. To be acknowledged, feared, and needed at the same time twisted something in his chest. Ilera approached from behind, placing a steadying hand on his arm. Her warmth cut through the static buzzing beneath his skin. She didn't flinch at the crackling distortion, didn't recoil from the monster the world saw. You don't have to carry this alone, she murmured. I'm with you. Always. Her voice grounded him more effectively than any spell. But Rian knew the truth. Staying in cities, near people, near fragile structures, was a risk no one could afford. His evolution hadn't stopped. The calamity energy continued to circulate inside him like a slumbering storm. I can't stay, Rian said softly. Not here, not anywhere crowded. If something triggers another surge. He didn't finish the sentence. Illyra's hand tightened. Then I'll go with you. Rian shook his head gently. You can't. The world needs you more than it needs me. And if I lose control, I won't let you be close enough to be hurt. Pain flickered in her eyes, but she understood. She had always understood him better than anyone else. He turned away, the air humming in his wake. The guild leaders watched with grim acceptance as he began walking toward the far horizon, toward uninhabited lands where no one would die if he slipped. Within weeks, rumors spread. A dungeon anomaly in the northern mountains dissipated before anyone arrived, as if smothered by an unseen force. A catastrophic beast in the west was found dead, its core imploded from within. Rifts that should have erupted instead collapsed quietly, as though intimidated by something far worse. Whispers circulated in taverns and guild halls. The human catastrophe walks the wilds. He's hunting rogue dungeons alone. He protects the world, but never lets himself be seen. Some feared him, some respected him. Most prayed never to meet him. But one truth echoed everywhere. Rian Solace, the living disaster, had chosen to become the unseen shield of humanity. A catastrophe who wandered the edges of civilization. Not to end the world, but to keep it alive.